morning, ladies and gentlemen, David here, and welcome back to another Atlus news episode. And once again, we're going to talk about Persona 3 Reload and the Switch 2 version of the game. And unfortunately, with this release, it's bad news after bad news, although we did get good news that there's going to be a patch for the game fixing performance issues. Well, today we're going to talk about the sales of the game, and it's really unfortunate, but it was kind of easy to predict that the game didn't do well at all. And the sales numbers that we actually have is the first week of sales for Japanese physical copies of the game. So just want to clear that out. Famitsu, they give numbers for sales, first week of sales of all games that release in Japan, but it's always physical games only, okay? So in this case, we are, yes indeed, talking about a physical game, which is a game key card, okay? So the numbers, to be fully honest, they really suck. They're extremely bad. And Persona Central, which is a source for this video, it's going to be linked in the video description as always. They compared this release to other Persona series releases when it comes to their first week of sales on the market, physical copies only, okay? And it's looking awful. It's actually one of the worst selling Persona games of all time. And before I get into my analysis of things, this is really unfortunate because I am a huge Nintendo fan, and if you can't tell, I am a huge Atlus fan as well, and seeing my favorite franchise or some of my favorite franchises from my favorite development team get released and ported to my favorite system, and for it to be like a big flop like this is a real bummer. But unfortunately, I think this game didn't deserve to succeed that much. Persona 3 Reload itself is a really good game, but this release on Switch 2 has everything going against it. It's too expensive. It's full price $60. There is no DLC included. If you want to buy all the DLC, that's another $60 on top of it. So it's a €2 port at 120 USD if you want all the content, which is absolutely ridiculous. I think it's way too expensive. If you wanted to make it 60, all the DLC needed to be included since it's a €2 port. Hey, I would even be fine charging, let's say 70 for this if you include all the DLC. I think that would be fair. But at that price, it's rough. The game released on all other systems too, so I think a lot of big fans like myself would have double dipped if it was a decent release, but there's also a lot of performance issues that other people notice. It's 30 frames per second. Plus frame pacing issues. So it's not at all the best version of the game. And the Switch could definitely handle that. I talked about that in previous videos, but the Switch is running games like Cyberpunk and Resident Evil Requiem at 40 frames per second stable. Games that are 10 times more demanding than this slow-ass turn-based RPG, you know? So that's really a bummer. It's poor optimization, and the development team themselves are saying like, hey, we've heard your voices and we'll fix this, but it wasn't there at launch, which is definitely the reason why one of the many reasons why the sales are really awful. And it's even worse when you start to think about the sales that we're looking at. We're looking at the Japanese market, a market that buys these games, especially on Nintendo platforms. Nintendo is very, very dominant in Japan, like very superior to Sony in terms of sales, especially for games. It doesn't show here. It really doesn't, okay? Another big problem with this release is there's no physical version. There is really no physical version. There's game keycard. That's it. The game's not on the cart. You download the full game. So obviously, when we look at physical sales and we only look at game keycards, that's a problem because a ton of people are like, what the hell's the point of a game keycard? It's a download. Might as well download it myself from the eShop, you know? So just the fact that we're looking at game keycards doesn't, generally speaking, let's say I was looking at PS5, you know, a PS5 release of Reload, and we're looking at the first week of sales of the PS5 release of Reload. It would be like a 50-50 split physical digital, right? Or around that. In Japan, generally it's a 50-50 digital physical split. But I'm very confident that the game sold 7,000 physical copies in its first week, just to put it out there. We'll compare it to other games in the franchise and their first week of sales physicals in a second. But I'm confident that since it's a game keycard, the split is probably not 50-50. I definitely think Reload sold more than 7K copies digital on Switch 2 in Japan in its first week of sales, but we don't have those numbers. So those numbers are not available. So I'm just looking at what we actually have. So just the fact that it's a game keycard is, again, for me, the reason why I did not double dip. And I am huge Nintendo fan, huge Atlus fan, huge Persona fan, huge Reload fan. So there was no reason for me not to double dip. And I did, because I would not have played it, you know, but I kind of wish I could put that cartridge on my shelf, you know, as a collector. That's what I did with Raito, you know. Raito got a physical copy on Switch 1. I played it through a review copy on Switch 2, but I bought the physical on Switch 1 because I want to support the team. And yeah, but when it comes to Reload, I'm like, dude, it's a game key card. I'm good, you know. So that it is another reason why people are skipping it, you know. Now, if you look at the comparison that Persona Central did, shout out, as always, those comparisons are awesome. You can see that they listed 12 games, which some of them are recent, some of them are older. We're going back to like PSP days, and it's the second to last worst selling game, the last one being P5 Royal, the PS5 version. When that was ported to PS5, Royal sold 5,000 physical copies in its first week. But again, if you compare like the Switch version of Royal, which was a very late port, it was a 3-year late port, that sold 45,000 copies physical on Switch 1 in its first week in Japan. So look at the chart. It sold 6,778 copies on Switch 2 for Reload, making it the second to last worst selling game. And right after that one, you have Eternal Punishment on PSP, which Japan got that, we didn't. Still salty about that. But that one sold 28,000, and then you jump straight to 40,000 copies with the PS4 version of Reload. That's crazy. That's crazy. Persona 4 Golden on Vita being the best-selling game for when it comes to like first week of sales physical in Japan. When you look at PSP and Vita, like the digital physical split was completely different than what it is nowadays, so it's kind of normal. Right after, when you look at P5R on PS4, that was a 2019 release. There's 2,000 physical copies, so there are a lot of digital copies as well. That is an immense success when you look at Royal like this, you know. So yeah, I mean, it's really, really sad to see. When I look at this, I just hope that Atlus is going to get a good read on those sales, and they're going to be like, okay, we fucked up. Because to be honest, that's what happened. The platform is not the issue here. The quality of the port, the pricing structure, and the choice of no physical releases for that game is the reason why those numbers are ass. Not because Switch 2 players don't want to play RPGs, you know? Look at other games. They're doing great. Other RPGs are doing great on Switch 2, you know? So this release is just an unfortunate miss by Atlus, and I just want to be clear about that. And it kind of makes me a little bit worried. I'm worried that they're gonna look at these numbers and they're gonna be like, well, it's not worth putting games on Switch 2. And they're just going to skip it. I highly doubt it. I still definitely think that, let's say, a Persona 4 Revival is going to show up on Switch 2 for sure. I hope so, at least. If they decide to skip the Switch 2 and we hear that it's because of this port of Reload, I am going to be very salty. Because, again, I think this port would definitely have been a bigger success if it had winning conditions for it, you know, because everything was playing against it. So that's where I'm at. Sad news on this Halloween day, but here we are. I hope you guys have a great day and a great weekend. Thank you so much for watching. And if you want to stay up to date on all things when it comes to Atlus news, you are at the right place. Please consider subscribing and ringing that little notification bell. Have a good day, y'all. Bye.